Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to the Sunday services at Center for Spiritual Living, Denver. We are a loving and prospering community in the heart of Denver and online. We now conduct hybrid services at the historic Grant Avenue Community Center and Sacred Place, located at 216 South Grant Street, Denver, Colorado. All are welcomed here. A place, space, and face of love. We are a spiritual community practicing universal principles that enrich our lives. We are grateful that you have blessed us with your presence. While online, we'd love to know you're watching with us. Feel free to leave a comment and let everyone appreciate you. With everything going on, life can feel overwhelming. CSL Denver wants you to know we are here for you. Please know that our practitioners are available for personal prayer work. Our licensed spiritual practitioners' names and phone numbers are available on our website at csldenver.org. Or if you have a prayer request, feel free to email it to info@csldenver.org. For your convenience, you'll find clickable links in the description of this broadcast. Rev El Zia, along with all our guest speakers, practitioners, service coordinators, and musical inspirations, want you to know how truly grateful we are that you are with us today. Thank you for your continued support and participation in our services, workshops, and events, as well as providing financial contributions to our center. If you're interested in upcoming events and information, we send out weekly newsletters. Sign up by visiting www.csldenver.org. We deliver services in a hybrid format where we meet in person at 216 South Grant Street. We will also continue to live stream all services on Facebook and YouTube every Sunday. Find us on our respective channels as well as on New Thought Media Network. Again, thank you for your precious attention. Now prepare for engaging enlightenment.
There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden where God's grace blooms. There is a garden where everything grows, a beautiful garden where love is sown. And in this place of light and love, you can have anything that you're dreaming of. There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden. That garden is you. place of light and love. You can't have anything that you're dreaming of. There is a garden where dreams come true, a beautiful garden. That garden is you. Such a beautiful garden. That garden is you.
Good morning. I'm Alice Nutter, practitioner here at Center for Spiritual Living Denver, as if you all didn't know. So I invite you to join me in an invocation. So if you're comfortable, please sit back and close your eyes and just move into that space and that place that is always here, where the divine is living, moving, and breathing each and every one of us. And so as we move into this service, we absolutely know that Reverend Mark's words are so truly, truly blessed, and that my reading hits home where whoever needs it, that the music by Jesse Powers is wonderful, and our tech support has just been so wonderful, and it is so truly blessed. And we bless all who have chosen to watch our service this morning, either in person or online, just knowing that each and every one who chooses to be here goes away with something to move their lives forward in a positive direction. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for Center for Spiritual Living Denver. I'm so grateful for all who have chosen this to be their home, and knowing that all is well and it is good. And from that place of gratitude, I release this into that one mind and that one heart. And so it is. Amen. So our reading this morning is from this month's Science of Mind magazine. And the title of the article is "Who is the Real Me? Finding Your Hidden Truth" by Kelly Robbins. As the bumper sticker reminds us, no matter where you go, there you are. The more we understand what makes us tick, the better equipped we are to respond to the many challenges we encounter. Our internal values, sense of ethics, and ability to see our options come from within. The journey of self-discovery is an adventure. Our pursuit of who we really are is often the impetus to question our beliefs. Do I believe in God because I was told to? What do I believe about the universe? Politics, social justice, what is right and what is wrong? What is my truth? In this messy and beautiful process of unraveling our truth, we discover our authentic selves. We meet and learn to love who we are. Every aspect of our lives deserves to be questioned, honored, and guided to reveal the truth of who we are and what we believe. Each of us has an amazing ego and a past that tends to detour our inner spotlight and put the focus on what we are not, what is wrong with us, rather than focusing on what is right. Personal power requires us to put our ego in its place and to keep our fears and insecurities in check. If you've ever read a good mystery, you know the difference between fact and truth. While facts represent evidence, the facts and evidence may point in different directions to keep the reader turning the pages. The truth embodies something more essential. Truth combines facts and evidence with values and beliefs. Truth filters the changing facts and evidence to lead the story's protagonist to the wrongdoer. How can we use this information to make a positive change in our lives? It begins with discerning what is truth and what is a fact. Pick an area of your life. A relationship, a struggle, something you would like to improve, or a way you would like to show up differently. Focusing on that area, complete the following steps. Number 1, create a fact versus truth chart. Number 2, know your truth. 3, teach yourself to see the truth. And 4, confront yourself. When you know the truth of who you are and what you are made of, you can begin to have authentic actions rather than automatic ones. This is an amazing, powerful, innate strength in knowing spirit is our only power. And we reclaim our power not by giving it to external life circumstances, but by speaking truth to circumstances. And also, with the questions, I created a little sheet you can take home with the steps 1, 2, 4, and explains a little bit more. So our quote by Dr. Ernest Holmes is from Questions and Answers on the Science of Mind. We automatically claim our freedom when we are convinced that we can use no mind except the creative mind of God, and we seek to create no limitation for ourselves. And now let's hear some music by Jesse Powers called The Image.
They're in the center of my soul. I can feel it all around me. Something holy and untold. But I hear it perfectly. Somehow in the deepness of now, I can see I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now, I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Beyond books and words and songs, at the gate of all my longing, leaving certainty behind. I take one step and you come running. It's clear in the sweetness of here, I can see I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now, I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Love, love, flow like water. Love, love, move in me. Love, love, flow like water. Love, love, move in me. Oh, love, love, flow like water. Love, love, move in me. Oh, love, love, flow like water. Love, love, move in me. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now, I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love.
We all were made in the image of love. You know, it's a beautiful song to open with today. Basically, it was a nice camera shot. It's great to be back with you here at CSL Denver. I was here maybe about 6 weeks or so ago and was speaking at that time about a project that I was working on that I was really excited about, and gave you some quotes from a new Ernest Holmes book coming out. And I just want to start off this morning by giving you an update on that project, because we have moved along and it is going to publication. And in fact, we have a cover. It's being printed and it'll be available in the first couple of weeks of August. And Diego, if you want to show the cover on the graphic on the screen, that'd be wonderful. But that'll show you what the book looks like. And it's Ernest Holmes at Asilomar. And it's basically a compilation of all his talks and classes that he did at the Asilomar conference grounds in the 1950s. And he was there from 1954 through 1959. We've compiled all of the talks and classes and edited the content. There is a nice intro that gives you context for the entire thing. And there's also a nice photo album that's included with it, with a number of unpublished pictures of Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, as well as the Asilomar grounds in the 1950s. For those of you who are students of Holmes, it's a wonderful book to help deepen your understanding of the philosophy. I wouldn't call it an intro book, because what you had in the 1950s was Holmes would come to Asilomar, and the people there were those who were steeped in the philosophy already. So he wasn't giving intro talks, he was giving his more advanced talks. And in fact, in one year, he did a 5-part class on mysticism, and that entire class is included in the book as well. So if you're interested, the last graphic that was up on the screen had information about going to it, which Alice posted on the Facebook page for CSL Denver. There's a link there that takes you to the place where you can pre-order the book. Again, Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, and it's an exciting new book with the words of Ernest Holmes. I think that anybody steeped in science and mind is going to want to get a copy of it. Anyway, great, wonderful resource. I'll speak a little bit more about it later on in the talk, but let's get into the talk. This morning, our subject is awakening to our true self, which raises 3 questions in my mind for those of you who are online or watching on the recording or here in the room. I want you to contemplate, what do you mean by your true self? That's one question I think we need to consider. What is it we mean by our true self? Alice was reading some words a little while ago that we're getting at tools to help you get at your true self. But what do we mean by that true self? And I think we all have different ideas about that. The second question that comes to mind is, what does it mean to awaken to that true self? And the third question is, how do you go about actually doing that? And that's what we're going to be discussing over the next few minutes. Let's first start with this topic of what is our true self? What is our true self? And no matter where you are in this moment listening to these words, I'd invite you to think to yourself, what does that mean to be in my true self? And this will be the one piece here in the participatory realm in the room. I'd like, if anybody's got a thought, a couple of words on what is it your true self? What's the word that comes to mind? If you got a word, just raise your hand real quickly. Come on. Mm-hmm. All right. What? God. God is your true self? Authentic. Divine. Anyone else? Yeah, good. Yeah. Authentic, God, spirit, divine, those kinds of concepts typically come to mind. I know that when I look back over my history as a human being going through this lifetime, that I've developed and changed and grown in the concepts of what does it mean to be my true self. I think if somebody would have asked me back in my early 20s, they'd said, Mark, what's your true self? I'd said, well, my true self is, my name is Mark, and I live here in this town, and these are my parents, and this is the job I'm working at, and this is my family. And I would have defined my true self all in the worldly story of who I was navigating through life here on earth. But as times changed, and I grew a little bit, I became aware of the fact that my true self was more than that. And I started figuring that my life was more than this physical material realm that I find myself living in, that there's this other idea out there that it was starting to creep into my awareness, an idea that maybe there's a pattern or an idea of who I truly should be more than this story I'm telling myself in the physical life. And so I had this pattern back here that I was tapping into. And then I started using words like, well, my true self or my authentic self or my calling and similar kinds of words that were trying to get me to figure out this pattern of the perfect ideal of who I am supposed to be in this physical life and bring that pattern into being and manifestation in here in the physical life. So then you would say at a certain point in my life, if somebody said, well, what's your true self? I would start talking about, well, it's this authentic nature of this calling and this vision I have for Mark as a human being showing up on the planet who's tapped into something greater than just the material. And that's good. That showed that I changed and was growing, was on my spiritual path. But there's also, at a certain point, there's a certain aspect to it that takes you even further than that pattern or ideal or authenticity for Mark is something that's even behind the idea. And that's what some of you were getting at, and that's because we start recognizing at a certain point in our path that our true self really is God. It's really spirit. It's really the divine. It's the oneness in which we find ourselves living this life of multiplicity. What we come to believe and know about our lives at some point on our spiritual path is that we know that we are spiritual beings having a material existence, and that we're living in these two areas simultaneously between the material world and the spiritual world. And that the more we can move our shift and focus up into the spiritual world, the more we're tapping into our true self. Our true self recognizes a unity of all that is. Whereas when we get stuck in the multiplicity and the stories of our life and what's going wrong in the world of politics and the world of not enough and all those other things that pop up in our life, that think that these lives are not good and perfect, when we're mired in those stories, then we're not being in our true self. But when we can tap into the essence of our interconnectedness to all it is, then we're getting into the true nature of who we are. Now, what I've come to understand is that there's lots of words for this, lots of ways in which spiritual teachings bring about this idea. And I want to sort of set a mental image with you this morning that comes from a book from 1908 that I've talked about a few times called The Kabbalion, K-Y-B-A-L-I-O-N, written by a New Thought author back in 1908 called William Walker Atkinson under the name Three Initiates. And I'm not going to go into much about the book, but he did have a couple of things in there that led me to this picture. He said that everything is a polarity. And so that we have this polarity between the physical world and the spiritual world, between our being mired in the world of form and our stories. And on the other end of the polarity is the spiritual realm of God. And that we're moving along that polarity. And one of the other things Walker said in that book, or Atkinson said in the book, was that everything vibrates, that everything is in a vibratory state. And that when we are in the most dense physical aspects of our being in the physical realm, things are vibrating so slowly they appear to stand still. But when we are so immersed in the essence of spirit and love, things are vibrating so fast they appear to stand still. And that it's almost like turning a dial, that our lives are like turning a dial. That every moment we have an opportunity to put ourselves on what station or frequency we want to put ourselves. And a lot of times our frequency might be stuck in the lower, deeper, slower essence of the physical crap that we define physical life with. But sometimes we turn our dial up and we're moving along towards our true self and our true nature. And the more we can turn the dial into that faster vibrational essence of spirit, the more we are approaching our true self, the divine, God, spirit. Now, but we turn our dials back and forth all day long. We turn on politics and we turn the dial down. We may come to CSL Denver and get a message and have inspiring music, and we turn our dial up. But if you look at other spiritual teachings, we've been getting the same message to us for many, many years. I know when I first was approaching spiritual teachings, people talked about, well, we have our lower mind and our higher mind. And we want to tap into our higher mind. Higher mind is nothing but turning the dial up. People would talk about, we need to move our chakra energy up. But what is nothing but the crown chakra is often called a pathway to the cosmos. The more we can live in those essence of the energy of the higher chakras, the more we've turned our dial up towards our true self. Many people talk about the fact that we have physical bodies, emotional bodies, mental bodies, spiritual bodies. The more that we can turn our attention towards the spiritual body, the more we're turning our dials up towards our true self. We talk about in Science of Mind a lot about divine consciousness or the Christ consciousness, or recognizing that, yes, we all have conscious awareness, but we use that conscious awareness in different ways. And the more we can turn ourselves up into that Christ consciousness where we understand the unity of everything, the more we're turning those vibratory dials up to spirit. So the essence here is really that we are moving along that path from our lower vibration to our higher vibration. We're moving from the material realm to the spiritual realm. And when we talk about becoming our true self, we're really talking about shifting our focus and attention away from being stuck on the story of our form in the multiplicity of physical life. And the more that we're shifting our focus to the higher vibratory rate and our spiritual truth. And that's ultimately everything you go and read about. And every teacher that you go to is teaching that essence from their own unique perspective. Every person who says, here is the path and here is the way, has their own aspect of what they're teaching you to move up this path towards knowing your oneness. Now, we start, of course, with the reality that we're all spiritual beings who've been immersed into this world and have this multiplicity of experiences. And so we're all here on our own individual paths. And we're all here for spirit to experience life through us. And so to say there would be one path back to unity consciousness would be to limit spirit. Because spirit wants each of us to find our own unique path back to oneness. That's how spirit experiences the vast diversity of life, is through us each finding that path back to the divine. And we do it in our own ways. And so I say this because a lot of times you'll find people who are spiritual teachers who say, I have the way. And that it may be their way, and it may have aspects of it that may be useful to you, but it's only for you to then take what's useful for you and recognize they're giving it to you from their perspective. And that includes me. That includes everybody you find in a Science of Mind or religious church, religious science church. We all, through Centers for Spiritual Living, have our own unique perspective on how to manifest and move towards that one true self, which is our spiritual nature of oneness. So what is it, our true self? It's ultimately that oneness and living in the Christ consciousness, the divine consciousness, being in that flow of knowing and recognizing the unity of everything. But we're all on our individual paths to get there. So the second question I pose is, well, what do we mean by awakening? Well, by now it should be self-evident from what I've been describing, but when we use the word awakening, we're usually talking about trying to use a metaphor about, well, we're asleep and we wake up. And the truth is, sleeping, and I don't know what it is for you, but for sleeping and waking up, it's not an on-off switch. Sometimes I'm deeply asleep. Sometimes I'm lightly asleep. Sometimes I'm in a groggy state. Sometimes I'm okay. I'm with you. And other times I'm hyper attuned to what's going on. So even in waking up, there is a continuum. And I think we can all recognize that from our own lives. And so, but waking up, the metaphor of waking up is trying to go from a sense of I'm not aware. And when are we not aware? When we're immersed in the world of the multiplicity of life and the smallness of the stories of our lives, that's when we are asleep. But when we can shift and turn the dials up and be more and more awake, that's when we become more aware of our unity to all that is. Okay, so that's the path. So waking up is simply moving that dial and moving from one end to the other. Another metaphor that's often used is we were in the darkness and now we're in the light. We have become enlightened. And I got to tell you a story. When I was younger, I read a lot about enlightenment. And this is where, before I recognized there were this multiplicity of paths, I thought that I had to find the truth of enlightenment from what other people were talking about. And I would read these books and descriptions of people who meditated, and they had these wonderful cosmic consciousness experiences that they would write about. And I'd say, I want that. I want that experience. So in my 20s, I would sit on the meditation cushion, get up every morning, and sit there and meditate and meditate and meditate. And I would do it for weeks, and then I would get pissed off because I never got that enlightenment experience that I was reading about. And I would go, well, this stuff obviously doesn't work. And I would then stop meditating for a while. And then later I would get enthused about it, and I would go back to meditating. And then we try it for a while and then stop and start and stop and start. I don't know if you relate to that. But I kept looking for that magical elixir, that one moment of that enlightened experience where I was just going to get that lightning bolt shot at me and I was going to know the truth. And what I've come to discover, and what I hope you all have discovered, and if not, I want to enlighten you about it, is that enlightenment, because we are the multiplicity of spirit experiencing life in so many different ways. Yes, there are some people who have those flash of illumined things and they go from a state of not aware to aware. They go from I thought I was separate and apart to I'm all one. Yes, people can do that quickly. But what I've discovered is the vast majority of us, it's like building a muscle or any kind of experience. The enlightenment process goes step by step by step. It takes you meditating, it takes you reading, it takes you having spiritual classes, it has you discussing with people who have spiritual awareness that you can glean things from. It is building up over time. And a minute ago, I said, remember how I felt like, well, my story of true self was Mark in his life. And then I thought, well, maybe it was when I was trying to be my authentic self. And then where now I see it's the knowing the oneness. That was a step-by-step process of becoming enlightened. Now, I don't stand up here and say, oh, I'm some enlightened being that you got to listen to. But what I do want to recognize for myself, and I want everybody listening to these words to recognize for yourself, is that by then, if you look at your life from where you were 10, 20, 30 years ago, go back in time and say, what was my spiritual belief and patterns then? And who am I now? And you look at the gap and then pat yourself on the back for becoming enlightened, because you are so much more enlightened than you were many, many years ago. Now, you might not sit here, just like I won't sit here and say, oh, I'm some enlightened being. But I can tell you, I'm much more enlightened than I was many, many years ago. But what that also opens us up is to a humbleness to recognize there's still more to go. And it's a continuous evolution. It's a continuous growth and development. If you ever encounter anyone, and I do encounter these people who call themselves gurus and enlightened beings, and that's fine and dandy for them. But I listen to that and I go, may be true, but I hope they're open to the fact that it's a continuous state of becoming and that there is no arrival. And if they may recognize, and when they call themselves enlightened, they're describing themselves from where they were previously to where they are now, but they're still growing. And I think if they get caught up in the hubris of thinking they've arrived and there's no more to learn, I think that's when we see a lot of these fallen spiritual teachers in all faiths and denominations that, we put them up on the pedestal for their enlightened teachings, and then they do things in the world of form that let us down. And we know who they are, and I'm not going to name them, but it happens so frequently because I think a lot of times it's easy to get caught in the trap of thinking you've arrived, and then using that to extend power and control over others and so forth, which only shows you're not arrived. Because if you were there, you would recognize the unity and you wouldn't be misusing the unity, because then you're causing harm. So what is awakening? What is enlightenment? Enlightenment is a continuous state of moving from thinking you're separate and apart and in competition with everyone else who's separate and apart, to moving to greater and greater awarenesses of being unified in oneness with God. That's and it's a process. It's a continuous process that you're walking along. And it's not to say you don't slip up, because every day we're back to turning that vibratory dial up and down. I'm stuck on politic arguing. I'm living in bliss. Okay. And we all, whatever it is, I can tell you, a quick story. I'm having, my wife and I were the other day, we were having this wonderful, we're planning another camping trip, and I'm just feeling so loved for all the things that we're getting planned. And then she comes in a few minutes later and says, hey, I got a person who I'm trying to get an appointment with, and the only thing I can do it is the day we're on the camping trip. And I'm like, well, change the appointment, you know. Duh. Which led into a conversation that I won't go into. But what I recognized was that I had turned my dial down. And we do it all the time. We do it all the time without even noticing. I remember years ago that I was practicing science of mind treatments and affirmative prayer and driving along in the car after class, and I'd be practicing my prayers and somebody cut me off, you know, and I'm giving them gestures and calling them names. So that dial can get flipped really quickly. So to be aware of that in your day-to-day moments and try to live more on the state of vibratory awareness where you're in bliss and oneness and less time in the sense of competition and fear and limitation. So that's what enlightenment is. Enlightenment to me, and I always like to say, I could be wrong. Somebody in one of my classes recently said, I like how you always, you know, sometimes when somebody questions something, well, I could be wrong, but, you know. Because I'm aware of the fact that no matter how much I've learned, the more I learn, the more I recognize how much I don't know. And the more I become aware of the oneness and the vastness of the universe, the more I recognize that vastness out there has a lot of stuff I've not experienced to know yet. So I have to be open to that whole possibility that more's coming that I haven't been open to yet or seen or experienced. Okay, so, but my take on it is to look at where you're, and that everything that everybody talks about in terms of using higher mind, going to Christ consciousness, discovering unity consciousness, living in oneness is all about moving up this scale and taking our time each day to try to live more in that sense of oneness. So then the question becomes, how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, there's lots of ways we've been talking about already during this talk, and we could go on and on and on about that. Some of the exercises that Alice gave you, that's going to be helpful. Meditating's helpful. I would say the very first thing is set an intention that you want to live more in unity consciousness. Just set that intention in your life, that is what I am going to do, that I recognize that I slip up from day to day, but I have an intention that every day I am going to be living more in unity than I am in divisiveness. That's the very first thing. But then for you, you have to devise the path and the tools. Look from the vast array of spiritual toolbox things that are available to you through centers like Centers for Spiritual Living, through other spiritual teachers, through books you read, people who are your support network to help you, to give you ideas for it. And so it can be things like reading illumined material, it can be meditating, it can be affirmative prayer, it can be having a practitioner session, it can be going out in nature, it can be just sitting quietly for a few minutes each day. It can be in the midst of the busyness of your day that if you ever feel your dial going down, to stop and take a few deep breaths. Find what works for you. But I will give you a few clues to identify those things that may be putting you on the right path. And one of those things is to ask yourself, does this experience that I'm doing, does it bring me a state of joy? Does it bring me more love? Does it bring me a sense of being in the flow where time stops and I'm just so with it that it's just magical? If anything that you are doing puts you in a state of flow, brings you more joy, brings you more love, then it's good. So long as it does no harm to anyone else. So if any action that you're doing in your life brings about that blissful state of joy, love, unity, and flow, then know that it's good for you. Here's the truth that we teach in Science of Mind, and it comes up going back from hundreds of years, back to even the words of Emma Curtis Hopkins, who influenced Holmes. But the universe is good. There is a goodness in the universe that's there for you. Are you tapping that goodness? Now, if you're stuck on a lower dial, it's kind of hard to get into that goodness. But the more you can tap into the higher dial of unity in God and spirit and the oneness, the more you experience love and joy in the flow, the more you know the life is bringing you goodness in all of your life. And when you do that, you'll start seeing things show up magically. Wow. It's like when you go and read the Course in Miracles, the miracles they talk about in there is the miracles that's available to us every day in a flow state because we're tapped into this essence of oneness. I'm going to close by just telling you about the book again for a minute, not as a sales job for you, but just how it came about. That I was living, I had worked for home office for 10 years and retired from there for Centers for Spiritual Living. And in the midst of retiring, I took some time off. I was taking care of my elderly dad at the time, who later passed. And I was trying to figure out what was next for me. What was next? And so I went into meditation and I came to this realization that I needed to go back to basics. And I think I might have shared this with you on a previous Sunday, but one of the things in basics was to go back to rereading some of the early New Thought teachers and studying Holmes, a lot of Holmes' writings and some of the writings that influenced Holmes. And so I went back to that. And all of a sudden, by the very nature of setting that intention and making that decision, the universe offered me an online class teaching Roots of Science of Mind. I got contacted by the Archives for Science of Mind asking me to be on their board. I joined their board, and all of a sudden through the flow, I said, how we have all this unpublished material that we're not putting out on the website and all this audio. How can we go about doing it? And they said, well, we don't have anybody to do it. And I said, I know how. And so right now, every Monday, a new Holmes document comes out on the Archives website. Every Thursday, a new audio comes out. They're scheduled. I mean, we're getting those ready and putting them out there. And there's all this content, and it's all just that all happened in the flow. And it was in the midst of this process that I was looking around at doing an inventory of all the stuff that we had from Ernest Holmes and others, and realized we've got a lot of stuff from Asilomar that's never been published. And so I suggested that to a couple of people, and they said, what a wonderful idea. And we brought it to the board. It was what a wonderful idea. And before we knew it, the ball was rolling. We were talking to publishing, and they said, what a wonderful idea. And I'm not taking kudos for the idea. What I want you to see here is the way that we're in that flow, how stuff just magically and miraculously shows up. And all of a sudden, this book from idea to form was 9 to 10 months. And the idea sped up when we realized that Centers for Spiritual Living was having their conference at Asilomar this year. And we said, that's the date we want to be ready. And so that's why, I'll be at Asilomar presenting a workshop on it, and we will actually have physical copies of the book. And that miraculously all got transpired and manifested, all by the intentions and being in the flow and miracles showing up. Now I'm going to tell you about one more miracle that very few people know about, but I'm going to share it here and online. You're going to be hearing more about this shortly. So we're finished the book. And now I'm on to some other projects, which I'm not going to talk about here in the interest of time. But while I'm researching one of these other Ernest Holmes projects, I go into this filing cabinet in the Science of Mind archives looking for a particular audio recording from somebody else. And I'm opening this cabinet that I've been in several times. And I look down in there, and there's an old VHS tape that has the word Asilomar on it. And of course, now my mind's attuned to that because all I've been doing is living, Asilomar and Holmes for 9 months. And we didn't have a VHS player. So I said, I'll take this home and I had to go out to the garage and get my VHS player and bring it back in because we don't ever play VHS tapes anymore. That's how old this thing had been at the archives. And so I plug it in, and it's interesting. There's a family had digitized and put onto a VHS tape their 8mm color movies from the 1950s. And so I watched this 26.5-minute video, and right in the middle of the video is a 2 minutes of Asilomar in the 1950s. And in the video is Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes standing by a car, signing an autograph for somebody. Ernest Holmes hugging family members as they're leaving and kids are getting on a bus. Now, I don't know about you. There's only been one video I've ever seen of Ernest Holmes. That's that TV show that's in black and white. And but here's this color home video of Ernest Holmes. Book's finished. Silimar's coming. I'm looking for something else. Up pops an old home video. We're in the midst of digitizing it and getting it ready to show at a Silmar. Then we'll put it up on YouTube and everybody gets a chance to see it. Also clearing it, trying to track down the family is another matter. But it's a proof. It was proof. It was like confirmation to me that when you get into the unity consciousness of oneness, the universe brings you miracle after miracle after miracle. And so I know this to be true from my own experience, that I can look at my life and just know it is full with miracles left and right. And I know yours is too. And so I invite you this day to turn that dial down and up, to be less in the world of form and competition and fear and doubt and limitation, and more in the space of the knowingness of the oneness of life, and that your true self is that divine self. So let's pray. So we just shift our consciousness and attention inward in this moment. We know there is only one life, one power, one divine essence. We know this truth for each and every one of us, that these individual expressions of who we see as individual people, when we are having our dials turned down, be it everybody who is here in the room, those watching, those who may be watching later on the recording, that they turn their consciousness away from that sense of being separate and apart more each day to feeling themselves being interconnected to the vast oneness of the universe. That they turn themselves up to knowing that there is this pattern behind the scenes and consciousness and in the divine that holds truth of what's their purpose for life, and they're becoming more, living more authentically that purpose. But they don't stop there. We know that for each and every one of you that you move not only in authenticity in your individual lives, but you do so by also tapping into the oneness in God. You live each day more and more in that expression of the unity of all that is. I know this truth beautifully. And in that, I know that we create miracles in our lives, that things flow to us with effortless ease, that our lives are great and grand expressions of the one. And for all of this, we feel thankfulness and gratitude. We know that gratitude is one of those deep spiritual practices that brings us to unity. We release these words, knowing they're so, and so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Mark. Turning my dial up. So we are so grateful and thankful for everyone's support of CSL Denver, whether it's in time, treasure, or talent, and especially during these times of change. Whether this is your first time joining us or you're a returning participant, we want to thank you for your continuing financial support of the important work we are striving to provide. Right now, there are several ways you can give your financial contribution to Center for Spiritual Living Denver, and this information is running along the bottom of the screen. We can do text to give or send your check to our P.O. box or go to our website, www.csldenver.org, and hit the donate button. However it is, we are so thankful for all that you give and like I said, in time, treasure, and talent. So if you will hold your hand to your heart or your gift, whatever you've got in your hands, just please repeat with me our usual affirmation. This perfect gift is spirit in form, circulating and blessing all that it touches. Freely I give and joyously I receive, and so it is. And we just have a few announcements. As Reverend Mark mentioned in his talk today, there is a new book titled Ernest Holmes at Asilomar, Lectures and Classes from the 1950s, and that was compiled by Reverend Mark for the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. So you can go to our Facebook page, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, and click on the link provided to purchase either the paperback or ebook. And I think you can get it either from the Science of Mind Archives website or from Amazon. Those are available there. So, and right after service next Sunday, July 23rd, until about noon, Reverend Elzia and the practitioners will be holding a divine dialogue. So we will meet to discuss we will meet to discuss whatever's on your mind regarding either Reverend Delzia's talk or what's going on in the world, or about turning our dials up, whatever works. And I also wanted to let everybody know that this week we received $79.65 from the King Soopers rewards. Amazon stopped that, but King Soopers is still giving the rewards. So that was a quarterly donation from King Soopers. So that was good. And then we've also got, and now the good news that the New Thought Media Network plays, and that's on our Facebook page. And they've also got just a plethora of programs for so many available for so many people, either the New Thought Radio or any of the programs. Let's see. So we have some older Science of Mind magazines over here. We have one July issue left for $4, but the older ones are for free. So if you want to take those home. And we are so truly blessed by everyone who has chosen to support Center for Spiritual Living in Denver by showing up on Sundays or watching us online. We know that as we move through this year and all the experiences that it holds, the Divine Beloved is guiding and loving each and every one of us. So thank you for joining us. And let's close out with Chris Chickering singing a prayer for who we really are. And please join us for fellowship after this. Thank you.
This is a prayer for the love within us. This is a prayer to release our hearts. This is a prayer that we carry with us. This is a prayer for who we really are. We are light, we are sunshine, we are what we believe. We are hope, we are promise of everything that's yet to be. We are bliss, we are laughter, we are flowers in the spring. We are life, ever flowing, and these are the words that we will sing. This is a prayer for the love within us. This is a prayer to release our hearts. This is a prayer that we carry with us. This is a prayer for who we really are. We are strong, we are fearless, we find the comfort in our souls. We are real, we are open to the destiny that's ours to hold. This is a prayer for the love within us. This is a prayer to release our hearts. This is a prayer that we carry with us. This is a prayer for who we really are. We are here, we are present in every moment that we breathe. We are peace, we are freedom, and this is a song for you and me. Yeah, this is a prayer for the love within us. This is a prayer to release our hearts. This is a prayer that we carry with us. This is a prayer for who we really. This is a prayer for the love within us. This is a prayer to release our hearts. This is a prayer that we carry with us. prayer for who we really are. Who we really are. Who we really are.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.